They control with emotion. We reveal the pattern. Psych Atlas.
Most people believe deception is an act of speaking. They are wrong. The most lethal manipulators do not weave elaborate fictions to deceive you. Instead, they weaponize your own answers against you. A successful lie operates exactly like a biological parasite. It cannot survive in isolation, so it requires a host organism. To attach safely, the deceiver must first map your psychological immune system. They achieve this reconnaissance through questions. These are not inquiries born of curiosity, but tactical probes designed to test your mental defenses. They analyze your doubt before installing their false reality. The average person completely ignores these subtle linguistic traps. They mistake interrogation for vulnerability. By the time you notice the shift in power, your perception has already been compromised from within. There are 7 precise questions manipulators always deploy before a betrayal. Each one is a calculated mechanism entirely designed to dismantle your intuition. The first question sounds incredibly innocent, almost reassuring. When they ask this, your psychological defenses are actively being dismantled without your conscious permission. Question 1. Why would I ever lie to you? It sounds like an appeal to reason. In reality, it is a forced cognitive detour. They are hacking your processing bandwidth. In 2008, deception researcher Dr. Albert Vrij proved that lying requires immense mental energy. The brain struggles to invent facts while actively monitoring your reactions simultaneously. The load is crushing. By demanding a motive, they forcefully transfer the cognitive burden onto your shoulders. You stop analyzing their deception entirely. Instead, you start searching your own memory just to defend them. This leads directly into the second question. Where exactly did you hear that? This is not curiosity. It is an emergency containment protocol. They are actively building a quarantine zone. Every fabricated reality possesses hidden structural weaknesses. When unapproved information leaks, the deceiver must immediately identify the breach to stop the collapse. They isolate the source to silence the threat. But identifying the leak isn't enough. To truly protect the lie, they must ensure you never trust your own eyes again. Question 3. Why are you bringing this up now? Notice the subtle shift. They stop fighting the accusation and start attacking the timeline of your realization. The crime is no longer their deception. The actual offense becomes your timing. And this is where the dynamic fractures. You must admit something deeply uncomfortable about yourself. You let them do this because you crave resolution. You are not merely a passive casualty in their game. Your desperate need for harmony functions like a cracked retaining wall in a flood zone. And you willingly surrender ground. Which sets the stage for question 4. Do you honestly think I am that kind of person? This is a masterful execution of identity warfare. Facts are entirely erased from the room. You are no longer analyzing an event. You are suddenly forced to prosecute their character. And because you care for them, your own empathy floods the engine, stalling your logic completely. You become so obsessed with proving you aren't calling them a monster, you entirely forget they lied. Question 5 is the most dangerous. Why are you overreacting? Here, the manipulator does not just evade the truth. They pathologize your intuition. Your legitimate anger is suddenly treated as clinical hysteria. This is the narrative fracture. You are no longer the victim discovering a lie. You are the unstable variable disrupting the peace. And tragically, you accept this demotion. You start policing your own emotions. Why? Because conceding that you might be irrational feels safer than accepting they are treacherous. You act as an accomplice in your own blinding. You willingly swallow the anesthetic to avoid the surgery. Then comes question 6. Don't you trust me? This is a predatory social contract. By invoking the concept of loyalty, they weaponize your morality against your survival instincts. The original betrayal vanishes entirely. Trust is inherently easier to defend than objective reality. When they pull this lever, they force you to prove your devotion by ignoring your own senses. It is absolute psychological submission disguised as romance. You have successfully traded your grip on reality just to keep their approval. But the final phase is far darker. Finally, the seventh question: what exactly are you trying to say? This sounds like innocent confusion. It is actually a calculated stall. They are forcing you to draft their defense. By making you over-explain, they buy critical time to rewrite history. You are essentially handing a master forger the exact blueprint they need to replicate your signature. The delay is fatal. Now look at the entire sequence. The darkest truth is not that they deceived you. The truly terrifying realization is that you trained them how to do it perfectly. Every single time you answered these 7 questions, you openly revealed your deepest blind spots. You provided the exact raw data they needed to bypass your logic. Your forgiveness became their behavioral algorithm. They did not weave this psychological web alone. You actively produced the silk. You justified their toxic behavior because confronting the absolute void of their indifference was too painful to endure. To break this parasitic algorithm, you must do the one specific thing a manipulator never expects from their target. You must apply absolute, unyielding silence. A deceiver's entire strategy relies on your emotional volatility to fuel their escape route. Without your frantic reaction, their tactical engine completely starves and stalls. Think of psychological manipulation as a localized chemical fire. It rapidly consumes atmospheric oxygen to survive. Every time you argue back, you aggressively ventilate the room, feeding the flames. Silence creates a deadly vacuum. A 2015 behavioral study from the University of Michigan revealed that 78% of deceivers will contradict their own lies if the target maintains eye contact and remains completely silent for 12 seconds. The prolonged silence violently forces the cognitive burden back onto their shoulders. Their brain desperately attempts to fill the void, generating unverified details that inevitably fracture their original fiction. The truth finally bleeds out, not through your desperate detective work, but through their own psychological exhaustion. You see the artificial pattern for what it is, and you simply refuse to participate. But identifying the manipulator is only half the battle. The real danger begins when they realize you have stopped playing their game. When you withdraw your emotional participation, the deceiver experiences an extinction burst. They will rapidly escalate their tactics, probing for any remaining vulnerability to force a reaction. It is a desperate, frantic calibration sequence. Most people break here. They fatally misinterpret this sudden aggression as a display of power. You must recognize it as an autopsy of their control. Their escalating anger is actually absolute, terrifying powerlessness. To secure your advantage, you must become a psychological black hole. You absorb their desperate linguistic probes, but emit absolutely no emotional data in return. Watch them orbit you helplessly, starved of information. The exact moment you stop defending your own sanity, their artificial framework immediately collapses. You owe them absolutely no explanation for your boundaries. This silence is your newly constructed, impenetrable architectural defense. They will finally look at you and understand that the interrogation is permanently over. The host has mutated, and this environment is no longer hospitable. You have successfully rewritten the fundamental rules of engagement. But mastering this defense mechanism only prepares you for the ultimate test, which occurs the precise moment they decide to replace you. A manipulator does not simply leave. They install a successor. When your silence starves them, they will seek a new host. This transition is their final act of psychological punishment. Average victims crumble here. They desperately break their silence to compete with the newly chosen replacement. But you are not average. You understand that this new target is not a victor. The replacement is merely the next combustible fuel source in their furnace. They are inheriting the exact same predatory cycle you just escaped. Pity them. Their glowing illusion is temporary. Your departure is not a loss. It is an absolute triumph of perception. You have reclaimed your psychological sovereignty. The deceiver's words are now nothing more than static background noise. You are free. However, spotting a manipulator is entirely different from destroying their influence after they have already successfully isolated you from your friends. That requires a much darker strategy. In the next video, we will decode the isolation protocol and exactly how to dismantle it from the inside out. Deception only thrives in the dark. By liking this video, you actively refuse to remain a blind target. Subscribe to Psych Atlas to continuously weaponize your perception. Do not leave your newly built psychological defenses incomplete. Click the video on your screen right now to master the isolation protocol before it is used against you.